A US court has issued a summons against the Saudi Crown Prince in relation to a former intelligence agent, Saad al-Jabri. The court order also covers a dozen other people, including residents of the US. Saad al-Jabri filed a lawsuit accusing the Saudi Crown Prince, Mohammed bin Salman, of sending a hit squad to kill him 2 years ago. He's now in Canada, where police and private security guards are reported to be giving him increased protection. Abdulaziz Al-Muyad is a Saudi human rights activist. He says Saudi Arabia is putting itself in a vulnerable position.
What Mohammed bin Salman is doing is no good for nobody, because a destabilization in Saudi Arabia is a very dangerous situation. I was born and lived in Riyadh. Riyadh have 6 million people. If any trouble happen in the system, Riyadh couldn't even drink water, because we get our water from the Red Sea and from the Arabian Gulf.
Protesters shouting at police to go away, and then scenes of violence reflected across Belarus's capital. Starting a few hours after polls have closed and continuing deep into the night, opposition supporters came out in their thousands to contest the initial election results. Riot police blocked the entrance to the large square and fired stun grenades into the crowd. And police trucks drove into protesters. Ambulances rushed to take the injured into hospital. Protesters have put up barricades onto the main roads to prevent police cars from getting there.
Well, basically, although the area that the tourists were visiting is south of Niamey, this is still only a few hours' journey, and certainly for people on motorbikes, from the very, very insecure region where the frontiers of Niger, Burkina Faso and Mali converge, the so-called Three Frontiers region. And that is really the most concentrated area of violent conflict between jihadist groups and the West African and international forces fighting them, particularly Islamic State in the Greater Sahara, which has been very active in this area. So really, all of this area is very risky, and it's quite easy for gunmen to move very quickly across the terrain. And even with a strong security force presence, it's really difficult to kind of counter these sort of attacks.
North Korea and the United States are reportedly exploring the idea of setting up bilateral liaison offices to get the denuclearization talks moving again. According to Japan's Euronews, citing a diplomatic source, the idea is for the North and the U.S. to each send officials to the capital of the other, what would be de facto embassies. Euronews says the two sides discussed the liaison offices in their summit in 2019, and the U.S. has continued to explore the idea. Strict border controls amid the pandemic, however, have made progress difficult.
Due to the past 9 days of heavy monsoon rain in South Korea, 31 people have died and 11 gone missing. Nearly half of the casualties were reported over the last weekend when torrential rain hammered the central and southern part of the country. Authorities say 13 people died and 2 went missing from Friday to Sunday, while some 3,700 had to evacuate. That adds up to 6,000 evacuees across the country as of Sunday. The country's southwestern Jeollabuk-do province is among the hardest hit areas. Floods inundated villages near the Samjingang River after the river broke its banks. In the southern part of Jeollado province, much of Gokseong County is now covered with mud due to a massive landslide. In Gyeongsamnam-do province, people are dealing with an enormous amount of trash that flowed in due to the water bomb.
黎生今次俾人國安法話你勾結外國勢力，你自己點樣睇啊？喂，唔好壓啦！
The government has just 2 weeks to agree on a state budget, or the country could be heading for the ballot box for the fourth time since April last year. Netanyahu and Gantz are not on the same page for the period of the budget. Gantz says a 2-year budget should be passed immediately.
We need one stable, extensive budget that takes economic uncertainty in Israel into account. It can be done. It's only 5 quarters. This is what needs to happen. This would have allowed political stability just like the agreement states. This would have allowed economic stability exactly as necessary.
The power-sharing pact signed by the two leaders stipulates a biennial budget. But Netanyahu is calling for a 1-year budget.
I have no intention of dismantling the government, and I have no intention of bringing this state to elections.
The families of 3 Australian servicemen shot dead by a rogue Afghan soldier are tonight pleading with the federal government to stop him from being freed. The killer is set to be released in a prisoner swap deal negotiated by the Trump administration.
A tragic return home. It was the final journey for 3 Australian soldiers killed in Afghanistan in 2012. Private Robert Pote, Lance Corporal Stefan Milosevic and Sapper James Martin. All murdered by a rogue Afghan National Army soldier, Hekmatullah, who was captured and sentenced to death. Now, after 7 years in prison, Hekmatullah might be freed in a prisoner swap as the United States bargains for peace with the Taliban.
Terrified residents of the village Ngwechewe fled to the nearby town of Mozogo in northern Cameroon after assailants attacked their camp while they were sleeping.
It's the suicide bombers because we found 2 unknown bodies among the fatalities, and you know they are the suicide bombers. The balance sheet is, as you see with me, 17 dead and 14 injured.
Suspected members of the radical armed group Boko Haram are believed to have carried out the attack, but the group hasn't publicly claimed responsibility. Boko Haram began launching attacks in neighboring Nigeria more than a decade ago, but after the Nigerian military destroyed most of the group's hideout, they moved on to border towns in nearby Cameroon, Niger, and Chad. A multinational joint task force is heavily guarding vulnerable villages, but rising attacks have residents fearing for their safety.